I think it's so important for people to understand where you came from and why you do this.
I'm originally from Uganda, so I grew up poor of the poorest. The only meal we had was once every other day, and we would have beans and potatoes. That's all I had. For me, on one side, I had poverty. On the other, I had a mean dad. For every abuse I received, my mother received the same. So at the age of 10, I was like, you know what? I went to the bus station and I asked the lady, hey, of all these buses, which one goes the farthest?
How did you survive on the streets?
One day I'm trying to steal from someone. This person just looked at me and said, hey, kid, what's your name? And one day he said, hey, Peter, if you had an opportunity to go to school, would you love to go to school? And I laughed at him. I was like, you're the dumbest human being I've ever met.
Now, you are a foster dad, you've adopted kids. How many kids have you fostered at this point?
43.
Do you have a limit on how many kids you want to adopt in the future? How do you date? Welcome back to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Let me introduce you to Peter Mutabazi, a dedicated advocate and influential voice in the world of foster care. His story is one of remarkable resilience and compassion. Peter himself once experienced the hardships of being a homeless child in Uganda, but he overcame those challenges and has now become a devoted foster parent and mentor. He's fostered over 40 children. It's unbelievable. His mission is to inspire others to see the foster care system as a powerful way to change lives, especially for vulnerable children who need love, support, and stability. Peter's tireless work not only emphasizes the importance of fostering, but also demonstrates the profound difference one person can make in shaping the future of countless young lives. You have to check out his Instagram, Foster Dad Flipper. You will be astounded at what this guy takes on and does. He's the most amazing father. I'm excited for you to meet Peter Mutabazi. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today on Misunderstood. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I am excited to be here as well. Like, you could choose me to read to me. I'm honored.
Oh, so yeah, I was looking through my Instagram one day, a long time ago, and came across your feed and then started following you and have sort of followed your story throughout and found you to be so fascinating when I found out your backstory and why you became a foster and adoptive parent. So do you mind if we start there? Because I think it's so important for people to understand where you came from and why you do this.
Yes, absolutely. You know, we do what we do sometimes because of the journey we've traveled. So, so I'm originally from Uganda. So I grew up poor of the poorest. You know, it's really hard to explain to an American what poverty sometimes really is. But think about, like, you grew up, but you never had 2 meals a day for most of your child life. You know,
Right.
I did not have a name until when I was 2 years old. Why? Because for every 100 children were born in my village, 60 would die before the age of 2. So most moms didn't name their kids until they were 2. So at 2, that's when I was given name. But also for moms, think about it. Like, if you can't feed your child for a day, you know, like, how do you tell them to dream? How do you inspire them when you can't feed them? And so that was really my life, poor of the poorest. We went to fetch water 3 to 4 miles away. You know, the only meal we had was once every other day, and we would have beans and potatoes. That's all I had. The
Wow.
only 2 days in 365 days I had a different meal was Christmas. So Christmas we had chicken. So I grew up knowing that Christmas was about chicken, and Easter we had beef. So those are the only 2 days in my entire life as a teen and a little boy I had. Then at the age of 4, I began to realize that not only were we poor, but my dad was the most abusive human being you could imagine. So for me, on one side, I had poverty. On the other, I had a mean dad. So there wasn't a place to hide. Outside, it was, of course, as a poor kid, you know. Then inside the house, it was just mean in every way, shape, form you could imagine. And then on the other hand, I had one parent that loved me, but she could not protect me. Why? Because for every abuse I received, my mother received the same.
Mm.
And
Wow.
most of the time, she received the abuse because of us as kids. Think it this way. When she would go to my dad and say, the kids haven't eaten, would you give them something to eat? She would get the beatings for that. So as a kid, you learn and watch like your needs put your mom in trouble. So the guilt that comes with that. So at the age of 10, I was like, you know what? I'm going to die anyway. But why should I give my father the opportunity to kill me? So I had never been 20 miles away from my village. So I went to the bus station and I asked the lady, hey, of all these buses, which one goes the farthest? And the lady said that one. I got on that bus and I ran away. Never been 20 miles away, and I went 500 kilometers away. And it wasn't, Rachel, it wasn't like I was looking for a better future. For me, my head was, I would rather die, but die in the hands of a stranger than my father. So that was the reason why I was running away. And of course, my only option, when I arrived in Kampala was to be a street kid. So I became a street kid from the age of 10 to the age of almost 16.
So when you were leaving, was it hard for you to leave your mother, knowing that you were leaving her behind?
I think for me, the idea was death. So I wasn't really, that I loved my mom, but I just didn't want to see all the abuse, but also the pain. That for me, yes, it was hard to leave my mom and my siblings as well. But somehow I could not take it anymore. I'm the oldest of five. So I think the older you are, the more you understand the pain. So for me, I was like, I can't deal with this. So yes, I felt guilty, but also it was my only option that I had to run away.
So your story gets more interesting after you become a street kid, but I just do want to ask, did you ever, I mean, I don't know how it works. Could you call them on the phone? Did you ever find out what happened to your father? Do you speak to your mother? Do you talk to your siblings?
Well, at this time, of course, as a street kid, you're treated, I don't know, for most of your viewers, hopefully they've been to third world countries.
Yeah.
But as a street kid, you're treated more like a stray animal. I mean, that's how I slept in the sewer. Why? Because the sewer smelled so bad that no other human beings can go. But for us as street kids, that was a safe place to be. I was never called a name. Why? Because they treated me like garbage. So there wasn't an opportunity to connect back home. Remember, I was 500 miles away. By then, there were no phones or anything. I mean, Uganda then was in the worst position. There were no phones available during that time.
Got it. But
So
I
there
mean,
wasn't any.
to this day, have you never seen your family again?
Oh, well, no. At 19, I went back home. So at 19, I went back to see my mom and dad. And now I get to see them and they're doing well. But it took me, almost 7, 8 years before I could go back.
Right. Okay. So continue with your story because it's so fascinating. So you became a street kid. How did you survive on the streets?
Well, on the streets, like think of it as a street kid, like you're abused in every shape, form you can imagine, things I cannot describe here. But when you're seen as an animal, when you're treated like less of a human being, I mean, at home, I wish I was dead the next day. On the streets, I just wish I was dead the next hour because that how severe the abuse was, from adults. And that became my life. So finally, as street kids, we learned how to survive, steal while you're helping. So we would steal while we are carrying people's food because it was easy to steal food than money because most people didn't make $1 a day. So one day I'm trying to steal from someone and this human being or this person, just looked at me and said, hey, kid, what's your name? And that really rattled me. Here's why, Rachel. For everyone who was kind was abusive. So for us as street kids, we identified danger by who was kind. So if you're kind, that means you're going to harm me. So my whole thought was run for your life. But before I could run, he gave me something to eat. And so he left. Did that scare me? Absolutely. So the next day he comes back, he gave me something to eat. So I saw the pattern on what days he would come. And that day I didn't have to steal. So he fed me for 1 year and a half. And one day he said, hey, Peter, if you had an opportunity to go to school, would you love to go to school? And I laughed at him. I was like, you're the dumbest human being I've ever met. Here's why. When you're a street kid abused every night, like, do you ever think of going to school?
No, I wouldn't think so.
No, it's like me asking you, Rachel, they are sending people to the moon. Would you like to go? Like, how many nights do you go to bed say, man, I wish I could go to the moon? Because it's far-fetched. As a street kid, the same. Going to school, you knew only those who have mom and dad, only those who are hopeful, only those who want to see the future. For me, I didn't want to see the future. It was just terrible every day. And I
Right.
thought the next day will be the same. So for me, I was like, never, forget it. So he let it go. And next time he comes back, he said, hey, if you go to school, there'll be lunch, dinner, and breakfast. I was like, what time do we go? Because for me, the attraction was food. And I had never heard of a place where you can have 3 meals. So when he said, can we go, would you like to go? I said, sure. But it was more of, I want to test you, but I don't believe there's a place you can have 3 meals. And sure enough, he put me in a boarding school, and that's how he changed my life.
Oh my God. I can't, I mean, I'm sort of speechless about this. So the kindness of some stranger that wanted to give you an opportunity to have a better life is what you found.
Yes, but it wasn't even that. He saw a thief, but he didn't treat me as a thief. Uh, no one had.
Why? Why do you think you stood out to him as someone with potential?
I don't know, because maybe I showed up every time I was there. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there's something that he saw in me. He said, this kid has a potential,
Mhm.
and I want to give that to this kid. But here's the thing: I didn't know that I had potential either. No one had ever seen it to me. These are the words that I had from my father every day.
Right.
Peter, you'll never mount anything. Peter, you're useless and worthless. Peter, I wish you were never born so I didn't have to feed you. That's what I heard.
Wow.
And I believe those
So
words.
how do you even go to boarding school and not have any education before that? How hard was that?
Yes, that was difficult. So it was the food that made me work hard to get to stay,
Mm,
because I had never had consistent food. But now that I saw food came lunchtime, breakfast, and dinner, now it became my goal to keep the meal. So that meant if I want to go to school, I went to school. I had never had a pair of shoes before then. So from the age of 0 to for almost 16, I never had a pair of shoes. But I wore those pair of shoes he gave me because I thought if I can wear these shoes, they will give me food. If I can perform better in school, they will give me food. So that's really the one thing I like the most. Is the one thing that helped me to stay and work hard. And that
mm,
was it. But also, not only did he just take me to school, after 4 months, he invited me in his home. So for the first time, I saw a family that ate together. I saw a man who wasn't mean. I saw a man who was kind. So for the first time, I saw something I wanted to be. I was like, if there's someone I want to be like him. And I
mm.
knew he was educated. I knew he was kind. And so by doing what he thought I could do is really what inspired me to do better and to go beyond what I thought I could ever be.
So I'm curious, was he the person that you looked up to almost like a father figure or a parent? Or did you also find in your boarding school some teachers or older people that stood out to you and really helped you and took you under their wing?
Well, the teachers, so remember, I had no formal education, but also my behavior as a street kid were horrible. I didn't know the rules, I didn't know the boundaries. Stealing for me was just as breathing. It hadn't anything to do with bad. But these teachers never saw the worst in me. They never kicked me out. That they always believed in me. Every time I got an F, they would say, Peter, well done. I'm like, wait, how? But because they kept using words of affirmation, that really helped me to build me to believe in that. Like, well, if they think I matter, maybe I can get a D. And if I got a D, they would still be kind of like, maybe I can get a C. And it's through the kinds of words that they use that I never had before. And being gentle and kind and not always seeing the worst in me, but always seeing the best in me, that really helped me excel and do better and want to stay. So yes, the teachers, but also him, because he always came and he always brought me to his home every Sunday, just to get to know him. So now I had something to dream for, because I had never seen a kind man, but I
Mm.
saw kind. I saw he can come home and sit home and they have food. I had never had that with my father. So I thought, listen, if I want to be successful, he's showing me how. So my standards became, I want to be like him. And that's really what helped me excel. That he
So
didn't,
go ahead.
that he just didn't drop me at school, but he brought me in his personal life. And that's really what helped me.
Yeah. So did you end up graduating from high school? Did you get?
Yes. Yeah, so I stayed in Uganda. So I graduated high school and then I went to university in Uganda. And then I got a scholarship to go study in England. And then that's how I came to United States. So overly educated through the kindness of a stranger who saw the best in me.
Wow. And you obviously liked school, you liked learning.
Absolutely, because I saw how far it can go, and how far it can take you. Again, I'm the oldest of five, and my siblings have all gone through university, not because they could do it, but I think they saw the example. They were like, if Peter can do it, we
Right.
can do it as well. But I could not also take them away from my family, so I thought the best way I can be there for my siblings is to give them what I was given. So I worked so hard to make sure that they also went to school because it was the only way I can yank them out of the abuse from my family.
Right, right, right. Okay, so what were your first jobs? Like, what did you do to make money when you were younger?
So most of the time, I would, when I was younger, when he took me in, he would give me opportunities to wash cars. So I would wash all the family cars.
Mhm.
Uh, I would contribute in their family, like if they needed cleaning, anything they needed, or planting things, all the garden stuff. Like I would do all that. In some way, I think in my head, I thought, if I can do what they ask me, maybe they will still be my friend. Maybe they won't yank the things they have given me. But
Right,
also at school. So instead of going for holidays, for me, I'll stay at school and work as security, as a gardener. And that's really because I didn't have a family to go to, only them. Uh,
right,
but I found ways of, as a street kid, I think you work so hard for free. When you find out you can actually earn, it was like more natural for me to find work easy.
right. And when you were studying and in school, did you think you wanted to be something in particular that you were studying for? Did you have aspirations all of a sudden and goals?
Yes. My first degree was in international business administration. So I wanted to learn business, from an international where, I saw how Uganda worked with Kenya and Tanzania. I was like, if I can understand how to market and work for companies that are outside United States, outside Uganda, that I would do so. Then when I went to England, I wanted to study crisis management because
Mm,
I lived in a war zone, Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, in a place where there was always atrocities of wars. So I thought if I can have good education, that I think I can work in charities that really bring peace and help during crisis. So that's what I started at university in England.
oh, wow. Okay, so then after you graduate, what was next for you? Where did you go?
So I didn't, like remember when you come from a village, you kind of think life in a small way.
Mhm.
But I met two Americans, who were working in a refugee during the Sudan war, and I worked with them for a few months. And one day they said, Peter, you're really good with kids on how you work with them, on how you see the best in them. Like you should really focus on working with, charities that, work with kids. I was like, really? And sure enough, I found like, hey, I can do that. So I worked for International Committee of Red Cross and then worked for Compassion International and then worked for World Vision, that I wanted to give hope the same way someone had given me.
Mhm.
And for me, working for charities that were working with children, I felt like that's a place I belonged, but also that I had more value I can add from what I had gone through as a child, but also to show the impact of when we believe in a child on how far we can take them.
This episode is brought to you by Holistic Goddess. Holistic Goddess has been such a trusted resource for me on my health journey. One product I really wanted to highlight is their holistic menopause support by PhD Health. It's been a game changer for me during perimenopause, and here's why I love it. It eases discomfort. It really helps with hot flashes and mood swings. It boosts focus. The ingredients in it, including creatine, support mental sharpness. I feel more focused and clear headed, which is so important for my busy days. It nurtures comfort. It gently addresses vaginal dryness with black cohosh. It's comforting to have that support during this time. It has natural ingredients. I love that it uses these ingredients like sage and rhubarb extract. If you're going through similar changes like perimenopause and menopause, I highly recommend giving this a try. It's been a relief for me, and I think it could help you too. Go to holisticgoddess.com and use code understood for 15% off all orders. Again, that's holisticgoddess.com for 15% off using code understood. You know, running a business can be challenging, especially when it comes to managing sales and making sure everything runs smoothly. That's where Shopify has made all the difference for me. For our misunderstood merch, Shopify has been a game changer. Before, we struggled with keeping track of orders and making the buying business seamless for our fans. But now everything's in one place. The checkout process, super smooth, just like we want it to be for our audience. With Shopify, I don't have to worry about technical headaches, whether it's selling directly from our website or across social media. It's all connected. The best part, it's the same checkout system we use ourselves. Trust me, it's easy, reliable, and our fans love it too. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/understood in all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/understood to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/understood. So when we find you now, you know, you are a foster dad, you've adopted kids. Tell me how you got to decide that this was something you wanted to do, and what was the first moment that you were like, okay, I need to figure out how to become, I assume the first one was a foster, or was it an adoptive kid? Tell me what happened there.
So, so when my first time in the United States, like I think I struggled seeing the wealth,
Okay.
my first day in the restaurant, I walked in and, they gave me food and I ate everything. But then I realized that food was being thrown away because people didn't finish their food. And for me, that bothered me like, wait a minute, other people are dying for lack of beans and potatoes.
Oh,
Food
yeah.
is being thrown away. So that really made me question my existence, especially in the United States. So then I go to London. There are kids in the United States who go home hungry. I was like, how can we throw food away? But yet there are kids in a neighborhood that have nowhere to go.
Mhm.
So I have traveled over the world, but I'd never seen a Black person who was adopting in Uganda or in Ethiopia or in China. They were always Caucasian and married. I was Black and single. So in my mind, I believed the lie. Like I thought you have to be white, you have to be married, because that's all I saw as
Sure.
what I traveled. So for me, I knew there was no way. So I walked into the foster care system and I said, hey, I would like to mentor teenagers. Would you give me an opportunity at least to meet them 1 hour a week? So then the social
Just
worker,
to spend time with them and mentor them and hang out
yeah,
with them.
yeah, just mentor them, like if they
Mhm.
need to go eat, if they need to go buy something, like I can do that. But the social worker who received me said, hey, have you ever thought of being a foster? I was like, yeah, I've thought about it, but I'm single. So I'm not called, I don't qualify. She said, hey, no, 30% of our foster parents are single. So you can be literally, it was on Monday. On Thursday, I began the classes to be a foster parent. So my whole goal was to be a foster parent. It wasn't really adoption. It was if I can be there for kids while mom and dad are getting it together and they go back, that would be the greatest gift I can give them back. So for me, once I knew I can, I was like, okay, where do I sign up? And that was really my kind of my trigger to
Wow.
foster parent.
So, okay, so what are the credentials and classes and things people have to do to qualify to be a foster parent?
So one, you have to be at least 21 in most states. So you have to be 21.
Yeah.
You have to have, insurance. You have to have your a job. Like you take care of yourself because they don't want you to depend on the children, but you take care of yourself. You don't have to rent or own a home, but so long as you have a safe home, either it's rented or you own it, and there's extra bedroom for the kids. The other part is to do the training. You go through, you have to be licensed. Some states take 10 weeks or 10 classes. So each depends on where you are. So you take classes. Is all you have to do, and then they have to do the background check. They have to turn every stone about your life and
Mhm.
figure out if you're fit to be a parent. And that's all that really takes: kindness, loving children, and willing to give kids the best you can.
So, and at the moment, the first time you were doing it, what state were you living in?
So I was living in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
So once I wanted to really be, I knew I could not take on a full-time job, and still be a foster parent. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be my own boss. So I moved to Oklahoma to flip houses. Because I could be my own boss as a single dad, at the same time be a foster dad. So that's where I moved, and that's where I started to be a foster parent. So for the first 12 children I had were all from Oklahoma.
Okay, wait, this is fascinating. So, how long did the course take you? Like you said, it started on Thursday. How long until you graduated?
So it took, it took only maybe 2 months, 3 months,
Okay.
how long it took. But for me, I had to, remember when you're a bachelor, your house is kind of bachelor life. So I wanted to make it kid friendly. So it
Mhm.
took me about 5 to 6 months to get all that ready. And after 6 months, I was licensed. And the first day I had my first child.
Wow. So it's that quick. You're not waiting around for all this. Okay. So when you're a foster kid, I mean, foster parent, how does it work? Are you saying, here's the sex that I prefer, here are the ages I prefer, or you just get what is in need?
Well, so for me, I like to be licensed through private agency. So they build a profile for you. You say, hey, I'm willing to take a kid between 4 and 10,
Okay.
because for me, I want to take kids who can talk and dress themselves and go to school.
Yeah.
Two, I'm a single parent, so I could not take kids who are fragile, need more, medication. Like I could not do it. So I was like, hey, I cannot do this. I didn't know I could be a dad to teenagers. So I said, no teenagers. I cannot do teenagers. Again, I'm a single dad. So I say I prefer boys rather than girls. But those are just parameters you put. But
Mhm.
usually you don't get what you ask for because, sometimes you say, I want a 5-year-old, but they have a brother who's 12 years old.
Right.
So, but you can put just suggestion like boundaries, but usually they will try to fit in those if you're not too strict of what you want. If you say, hey, I want a 5-year-old girl single, that might take a year to get.
Right. I see what you're saying. So, and if you're licensed, or is that the word, licensed in Oklahoma, does that mean you're only getting kids from Oklahoma so that you can continue them in the same schools, obviously, stuff like that?
Correct. So you're licensed by two agencies, your county and your
Okay.
state. So if you're private, you are licensed by the state. If you're local, you're licensed by the county. So you choose which one you want. And
Okay.
you can only take a child within where you're licensed. If it's county, only county. If it's state, you can take any child from any of from anywhere in the same state. So license don't switch or don't transfer. You can only get a license by one state.
And is the license just to be a foster parent, or does that mean you can also be applying for adoptive kids? Am I using my
No, it's
terminology
for
correctly?
only, yeah. It's only for it's licensed to be a foster parent. So
Got it.
once it's adoption, then they change agency. So no longer are you under the foster care, but now you're under the adoption agency.
Okay, so that's totally different. Okay, so let's talk about foster care. Who are the typical children that are coming to a complete stranger, sometimes in the middle of the night, from foster care? How does that work?
So it happens in different ways. Most time is what happened to the parents. And sometimes if there's an accident on the highway and the kids survive, but the parents didn't survive, those kids they are taken by DSS. So then they have to find a home for them to be that night as they look for the next of kin or
Right.
who the parents are. Or sometimes drugs. Most of the drug issues we have in the United States, most people will lose their kids because they're high and they cannot take care of their children because of neglect. Some sexual abuse, that some families or most kids are abused by family members, that once that is discovered, then they have to take the kids out of that home.
So
Or
usually it's coming from Child Protective Services, or the police have showed up and had to take the kid and they go to a foster home. I mean, could it be at all hours of the day, or is it kind of planned? You're going to get this kid on Thursday when the parents have to go to court.
no, no, it's all unplanned because they never want the parents were taking. Think about if they came to you and say, I'm taking your kid, you might just take off.
Right,
So
right,
they
right.
just show up in the middle of the night while you're sleeping and they're like, boom, with the police. And, they take them. And that's when they look for us. They say, Peter, I have two kids, and I need a home for 24 hours. So we call those emergency placement, short term. Or you're a mom, you go give birth at the hospital, and then they test you and they find out you have drugs in your system. That child cannot go with you. That child stays in the hospital,
Wow.
or they call a force of DHS say, hey, this child, we found the parents that are addictive to drugs in their system, so this child cannot go back. And that's when we come in. They say, hey, we need emergency as we look for the next of kin to take the child.
So for the most part, when you're getting a foster child, there's some trauma involved, some sort of emotional thing that this kid is definitely going through. And I'm imagining, even if their parents have been terrible parents for, some way, shape, or form, they don't want to just go with a complete stranger, right? I mean, are they missing their parent tremendously, or or half the time, are they missing the parent and the other half, they're so excited to get away?
Well, 99.9, they didn't choose to come to your home. So they are terrified,
Oh my God.
and sometimes even the abuse that is happening, the kids are not aware because for them it's normal. Think about if you're born in a drug home, that's all you've seen. That's all
Right.
when your mom has had, a different man every other week, I mean, that's all you know. So plucking you out of that, it causes trauma to the child because you're putting them in an environment they're not familiar with. But also, too, they love their parents no matter what they do to them, that they never wish to come. So no child comes to us that is excited to be with us at
Got
all.
it. Got
No
it. Okay.
matter no matter how severe the abuse was. It's later. So they build that trust later. But usually for the first time, you're a stranger. They don't know you and they're terrified.
Okay, so tell me about what that first time was like. I mean, you have an empty house just with you, and then all of a sudden, this new child comes in. Tell me all about that.
Oh, Rachel. Oh gosh. So first of all, they give you a license and you're like, okay, 2 months from now. No. The same night, they're like, hey, keep your phone. We might calling you for a child. And sure enough, they called me at 3 in the morning. They're like, hey, there's a kid who needs a home, and we are bringing the child to you. I mean, I panicked. So when
Mhm.
the child arrived, so this is my head again, like you overthink about things. So I put him, in bed, and then I locked every door and then I pulled the couch and put it against his door because I thought he's gonna run out, like he's gonna open that door and he's gonna run out. Like I'm not gonna give that up.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, so how old was he?
He was 5.
Okay. Okay.
But, so
And
he woke up and he said, Dad, that was the weird thing. He says, Dad, can I have something to eat? I was like, I slept the whole night worried. All you want is just breakfast. I mean, that was my head just
yeah.
turning around. And that's all he wanted. Just, I want breakfast, and he felt safe. And from then, I kind of really, it helped me to learn like, oh, I don't have to make it a big deal, but I really can follow the child's guide. They're hungry, they need to eat, and make their life comfortable and joyful as well as much as I can.
So how many kids have you fostered at this point?
43.
Oh my God. And a lot of them overlap. They're at different, how does that work?
So usually for me, I'm licensed for 5. So I can have 5 kids at
Okay.
once. So most time I take siblings because I really hate kids when they are separated. So I prefer to take siblings so they can stay together. It lessens the trauma. So usually, yes, I like right now I adopted 3, but now I have 2 foster kids.
Got it. Okay. Oh
Um,
my goodness.
and most time, like, I mean, I'll be honest, my youngest is a sibling of the ones I just adopted. So sometimes
Okay.
you might take 2 and adapt them, but when they give birth and the same thing happens, because now I'm next of kin, they get to call me like, hey, a sibling of the ones you already have has come into the system. Would you take the child? You know?
Wow. Wow. Okay, wait, let's go back to the 40 plus that you've fostered. How does that work as a foster? Are you told this could be for a day and this could be for 5 years? I mean, is there a limit to how long foster kids can be in a home?
All right. So, no, they tell you 24 hours. You're like, okay, 24 hours. And then 24 hours comes, they're like, hey, can you give us extra few days? You give them extra few days. A week passes by and they're like, can he go to school? Because we can't find a home. So no one ever tells you how long, you know?
Wow.
Anthony, the one I adopted, they asked for the weekend. They said, can he just come there for a weekend? And literally I said, okay, only the weekend. Well, he was my first son to adopt. So there's no one can ever give you the date or when.
Right.
Most time, I mean, if let's say, there was death in the family, the next of kin, the family is gonna come and take the child. So that we always know, but you don't know, is it in a week? Is it in a month?
Right.
And remember, before DHS gives back the child, they have also to do background check on the bio parents,
Mm,
on the families.
wow.
So
Okay.
you just can't come and claim the child, be like, okay, but we need to do background check on you.
Right. So what is the responsibility of a foster parent?
You are a parent 99.9999. The well-being of that child, you feed them, you help them overcome the trauma, you're responsible for their health, you are the one taking them to the hospital, you are the parent in every shape form.
Until they leave, until they're not in your care.
Correct.
But so I guess part of that question though is, what is the responsibility of, like, how do you manage having a kid come in who's so traumatized sometimes, and you want to make them feel safe and loved, but you know that this is not their forever home? So how do you create a forever home environment where they don't feel so unstable, knowing that they can go back into potentially different foster homes or instability?
Right. You cannot control where they come from and where they're going, but you can control what you have. So
That's
for
true.
us as foster parents, what we try to do is normalcy. Give the child normal life, you know? So make sure that, you know, you visit other friends that you know, so they know, hey, there's just more than this person. You know, let them go to school so they feel they're part of the community. You know, give them the normalcy as though nothing changed on the other side, you know?
Sure.
The continuation of what child needs, play, be whatever they need to, but at the same time create an environment that will help them overcome, let's say, things they've gone through. We've had kids who steal. Are they stealing because they want to? No, because their parents always send them to go steal at Walmart somewhere. Some kids will hoard the food because there was never enough, so they hoarded the food. So how do you help them to say, hey, there'll be food tomorrow?
Right. So you try and do your best while you have them.
Exactly. Or my normal life is abnormal to them. So
Yeah.
think about, if your dad and mom always yelled, for me, who doesn't yell, when I ask my child to do something or to respond, they don't respond because they think that's not how we receive commands. Like, you have to
Sure.
yell and use the cuss word. I know what you need, So in some way to like help the child rethink the way they do things, like, hey, we don't use that language. It's not appropriate for you as a 4-year-old to use, but for them it's normal, but you're trying now to kind of detox of what wasn't normal for them to do, but in a gentle way and over time.
Right. What are some of the biggest challenges you found in the foster kids you've had? Like, has anyone run away? Have their parents tried to come and take them when they weren't supposed to? I mean, was there any craziness that went along with it?
Well, yes, most of the challenge is that they take the kids away, but they never explain why they took the kids away. So that has been one of the challenges, because for me as an adult, they told me what the issue was, but they never told the child.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. If the parents are taking drugs, the kids, usually they'll hide it, but they will see them high. But they never explain, like, hey, we are taking you away because your dad and mom are always high. No. So when the child comes to me, it's like, but what did my parents do? Why did that? But also, I'm part of the system. I'm part of the bad guys. It's not just the police that came to get them or the social worker, but I'm part of the system. So they don't like me most of the time or right away because they feel I'm part of the people against their mom and dad.
Sure, I understand that. And then, but doesn't that cause disruption in a house that you've worked so hard to create this like love and bond and calmness in?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
How do you deal with that?
Kids are kids. I think for me, because I was one of those kids and I had the same trauma, like, it really helps me to understand where they're
Yeah.
coming from. So my focus isn't so much on the behaviors, it's so much of where is it coming from and how can I help them really see life or do things in a different way with time. Of course, my kids too, they understand that we have to go through the relearning lesson. Every time we get a child, my kids have to go through, like, hey, remember, this kid didn't have 1, 2, 3, 4. This kid doesn't understand 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's have grace towards him or her, but knowing that at one point things are gonna get better.
Right.
And
Right.
an advantage for me is my kids were also in the same position as well, though they don't do what these kids are doing now, but
They're
they relate.
understanding.
Yeah, they kind of relate, like, we understand why.
Yeah. Okay. What are the rules with adopting then? Like, what has to happen for a child to be up for adoption?
Yes. So just because I'm a foster parent, even if I foster for a child for 4 years, it does not guarantee me to be the adoptive parent.
Right.
So in order to be adopted, the parental rights have to be terminated, meaning the judge ordered like, hey, these parents are no longer fit to be parents, so they cut off the parental rights. Then the children are available at that point for adoption. But before I come in as a foster parent, they go to the next of kin. So they go to their uncles, their aunts, their grandparents, someone related to them to see if they can adopt the child.
Wait, I can imagine that that could be somewhat hard if there happens to be a grandmother, but the grandmother doesn't seem like they can provide that good of a life, or they don't really give a shit about the kid that much. They have their own life, but they are the next of kin. Like, how do you deal with that?
Exactly. The law says next of kin come first. So you can't fight it. When the grandma or the next uncle who wasn't there for, like sometimes we have the kid for 4 years. From the time they are born, they come to you and they turn 4 and they're up for adoption. And someone says, hey, I am the uncle. I'm coming for the child. Like literally, it is hard to fight them because they are the biological, they're the next of kin. So for me, I come in or I am allowed to adopt after they exhaust all the kinship. Then there's nobody. They're like, okay, now that there's nobody, now you're the one.
Right. Okay, so is the goal of the court system to reunite the children with the parents as best they can, even though it could be a little iffy, or what is the goal?
That's the goal. Foster care means, hey, temporarily, I'm going to have you for a temporary time while your mom and dad or your relatives are getting their life together, and then you go back home.
Right.
But the
How,
way,
go
but
ahead.
the way the court, but the way the court does it is so wrong because they wait and wait and wait. This child who lives with us thinks, hey, I mean, I have a little one. I've had her since she was 1 year and a half, and she's 3 now. So all she knows is me. So that is gonna cause trauma for the child to be yanked out of what's normal for her to a place she's never been or doesn't know. But the court doesn't see that. They just say, hey, they are relatives, they'll take her. But
Right.
that really causes trauma more to the child because you're taking her away from what we know, and there's nothing we can do to stop that.
Well, let's talk about that case in particular for a second. So does she call you dad?
Yes, I'm dad. I'm dad. That's all she knows.
And does she live in any sort of fear? I mean, I know she's very young, but that one day she might not live with you anymore.
No, she does not understand because she was 9 months when she came to us, so she doesn't really know. It's usually those who understand, like 4-year-olds from four, maybe from three on, no, from 4 onwards are the ones that live in a limbo. They love
Yeah.
you, they love your home, and they love you so much, but at the same time, they still have attachment to their mom. They want to go back home, so they live in this limbo of I want to stay here, but I want to go back home. So the court system destroys that. The longer they take, the more the child has been living in that limbo and causes mistrust and distrust and more trauma to the child.
Yeah, of course. So what do you think is going to happen in the case of this young little girl, right? Is that
Little girl, yeah.
so what's the situation with the parents? Are they still fighting for the rights, or they are getting their life together? Does she talk to the parents at all? What's the story?
So every child is given visitation time. They have to visit their parents when they're waiting to. Either they're drunk or high, they have the right to see their child for 1 hour.
Oh,
Once
wow.
a week. So they give them 6 months. If that doesn't change, they give them 12 months. If it doesn't change, they give them 8 months. So for us now, we are on year 2 going to year 3. Nothing has changed.
Meaning because the mother or father could not they couldn't stay sober or whatever it was for them.
Right. Whatever they request them to do, they haven't done. So then they are waiting for them to do so. So now it's up to the judge to say, we've given you ample time and we have not seen change, so we're gonna terminate your parental rights.
Now, is this little girl that you said is a relation of one of the boys that you adopted?
Two of the kids.
So clearly these parents have had this issue in the past.
Correct.
Right. And then I'm curious what your relationship is like with the mom. I mean, do you think that they do this because they know that they trust you and you're going to take their kids in? I mean, does that make it almost easier for them and enable them to not get healthy?
Yes and no. Out of you don't have those responsibilities. So what do? I mean,
Yeah.
you're healing. I because you're not taking care of the toddler. I am, that sometimes I think for me, because I know what my mother went through, because most people on the streets will say, what a mother will let their kids be on the streets. But they did not understand what my mom went through of what she was enduring. So I come with the same grace and humility. Like, I'm not a drug addict. Like, to be a drug addict, like, I don't understand it. But at the same time, to really have empathy towards them, But
Sure.
also, I want my kids, even if I adopt her and adopt them, I want us to have that relationship, for my kids. So there's no need of be hostile or be negative because I still want to have that relationship. Sometimes also when the parents get to see how parent you are to their kids, they realize like, you know what? I don't have the tools that you do have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to really, rather than take away, I think I would love you to be the parent of my child, but could you keep me connected to my child? Does it make sense?
Sure.
So,
Yes, of course.
so it's like you have to.
If they get to that point where they have no ego, because I think a lot of people, even though they cannot take care of the child, are like, no, that's my child. I want the child. And they make everybody's life miserable.
I-
Um, I'm curious, your older children that have the same parents or at least mother, do they have a relationship with her or are they angry about their childhood?
So kids go through phases, So, I've had them for 4 years. So the three was foster and then almost 1 year adoption. So we're still kind of really going to the adoption and them understanding. But right now they are kind of in a place of why would my mom who say loves me not come back and get me, So that is where they are. And you wanna meet them where they're at. So until they kind of understand that, then you'll be able to now have that connection. Like, hey, now they understand how can I really help them connect with their mom without causing more harm to them. Because for now, I think my daughter thinks, my mom said she'll come back, that she loves me. And that's how it ended. So there was nothing bad that happened to say, I'll never see her again. It's more like, think of you're dating someone and they go back to Europe and they never come back and no communication. You're like, did they break up with me? Like there's no close, And
Sure.
and to our kids, that's kind of what they are going through right now. Like, what did I do? Why
Yeah.
did my mom not love me that much? And
Right.
and once we go over the hurdle of them understanding, then we're able to bridge the relationship. But for
Yeah.
my teenagers, they have that because now they're old enough to understand. So my teens have that. They can call, they can text, they can, I can talk to their mom anytime I want because
Right.
now they're mature enough to understand that.
You've been a foster parent for so long. What are some takeaways that you would give to people that are listening to this right now that are contemplating doing it? How has it changed your life?
Oh boy, it's changed my life in every way. I've always wanted to be a dad, and give back. And for me, that has given me an opportunity. But two, especially for men, I think men, we've been, we are taught go work, but don't be involved in the kid's life. But I think for me, I'm trying to change that narrative. Like if I can be single and be a dad, a full-time dad, like any parents can be. It's not mom's job, but it's dad and mom's job, and kids need us, especially dads. I've had 41 kids. No one kid had ever said, I wish we had a mom. Why?
I
Because
was going to ask that. Yeah, why?
because they never had a dad before.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right, yes. The other part for those who want to foster, it is hard journey and it's a calling. If you sign up and you find out you're not cut for it, it's that okay. Also, foster is not an adoption agency. Like to go in knowing like I'm going to go in, but my job is to foster, not to adapt, because your heart is gonna be broken in every piece form.
Yeah.
But if you want to adapt, you go in saying, I want to adapt. So from the get-go, they kind of know your intentions.
Got it.
They're going to press you with kids who are likely for adoption
Right.
rather than for foster.
Right. Okay. So explain something too, because I think people might be hesitant to get involved in fostering because it looks like a huge financial burden. I mean, how can you go through all these kids and take care of them? I'm assuming the state gives you some financial support for each kid that comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every state gives, we call it a siphon, every state will give you funds. The kids come with Medicaid. They come with all the schooling they need, all the dental, they give all that. On top of that, they give you financial help to help you monthly to take care of them. If it's food, if it's clothes, that they give you all those to really help you. Even if you're single and you're not able to take the kids to the hospital, the DHS, the social workers, it's their responsibility to take the child to school. Daycare too comes with that. So for me, as a single parent, I won't do what I do and have a job and take care of the kids, but they provide the vouchers for foster care. So you have so much resource to help you.
Got it.
If they're teenagers, also they come, if you adopt a child that's a teenager, they will have free education for the rest of their lives. They have medication until when they are 21. And if they want to go to university, it's free within the state they live in. So there's help. Absolutely.
Wow.
To really help you to do whatever you need, no matter you have a job or you don't have a job, because the kids will come with resource that you need.
So as long as you can cover, obviously, the roof over their head and
Correct.
then
And yourself.
support
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. Then, and you have the separate bedrooms based on their ages or whatever it is and their sexes, then you can get some financial aid for the child. So you don't have to bear the burden. But I'm assuming, like, I'm curious about the schools. Do you have to they can only go to the public schools within your district? I mean, how does that work?
So it works with, so it's really, remember, you're the parent 99%. So you decide, I want them to go to this hospital so long as they take Medicaid.
Oh, you can make decisions.
Yes, you make all those decisions. I want them to go to this school because it's close to me. You make those decisions. The parents or DHS does not make those for you.
But how can you make those decisions if you don't know how long they're going to be with you?
Exactly. You just do what, like it's school time. If you know you're gonna have a kid for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you rather go get the application, at least have it handy or say, okay. Because so for me, remember, I am licensed to foster any kid. So most of my kids are coming 2 hours away. There's no way they can go back to that school because it's farther away, So unless if you're from the same county, sometimes it's a little bit close, and the state will provide the transportation back and forth as well.
Right. How do you date?
Is that
Sorry,
food?
is that too personal?
No, I like that. Is that food? I mean, so,
I have one child and I can't date. She makes my life a living hell.
Exactly.
So I don't know how you do it.
There's no room to date. Absolutely, for me. So I have a toddler who's just turned 3, and I have a 20-year-old. So for me, my life, I get a little freedom between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. I mean,
Right.
who's willing to date you during that time, But also, I think I love my kids, that I want to pour everything I can towards my kids. That for me, to bring in someone that doesn't understand the kids I adopt and the whole trauma, like I feel it's unfair to them, to bring in someone who doesn't understand, the joy you find in helping kids who are the most disadvantaged. But two, that are not trauma informed. Like, I think I will bring more trauma to that person. Like, unfair. Like, I feel it would be unfair to that. So for me, content, like to do this and back my mind knowing, like, I'm content where I am, and I'm content being a single dad, and I'm content just being happy of what I do is for me what drives me and what I find, usually I say, if you want to date me, okay, you're trauma informed and you can deal with 7 kids with trauma, sure, we can go on a date.
Well, I mean, I think maybe for you, it might be better to meet somebody that's already established in your life, somebody that you guys always see, a school teacher, I don't know, somebody that really gets your life and has been part of their lives and is a friend and a friendly face and knows you, as opposed to it's not like you can be on Bumble having new people come in and out of your life, I don't think.
No, but also too, even teachers, some are good at helping a child during the day, but they don't want to deal with them at night,
Well, that's true.
Or,
Yeah.
Or some just want to see them for an hour, but they cannot deal with, most of their trauma. So it's really a calling, and that person has to really fully be part of that in a way, I
Right.
think for me it would be impossible, somehow bringing someone that, unless it was their calling, and it would be unfair to them.
Right. Okay. So do you have a limit on how many kids you want to adopt in the future?
10.
Well, your house is already somewhat full and you can only do five, right, at a time? Or that means
Well,
five fosters.
teenagers, yeah, you can cheat when you take siblings, So
Got it.
I'm licensed for five, but if I had three siblings, it's easier to give you an exempt to
Does
six.
that mean you're licensed to have five kids in the house or five fosters? Like you have three that you've adopted, right? Is that what you said?
Correct. So I can, yeah, so
You
I
can
can
have
have
five more that you're
no,
fostering?
no, the
Yeah.
yes, two,
Got it.
but I can have three if they're siblings.
Got it. Okay, I got it.
Because the others are teenagers, they don't really need me, so they are
Right.
not really counted against me.
Right. But when they move out of the house, then that opens up a spot.
Yes,
Got it.
absolutely. So I would love to force more and adapt more if I can have a bigger house and a bigger car. That is my dream. The other part I want to share with you is most people don't want to foster because they're afraid of attachment.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Okay. Tell me about that.
So yes, it's hard to befriend someone knowing they're gonna go the next day, And for us as foster parents, it's obvious. You get attached to this kid, you love them, you pour everything about them, but in a month, in a year, in 2 years, they're gonna go away, and that is hard to really do and deal with. And
Yeah.
so most people are afraid of that. And for me, I counteract by saying, actually, the people who are afraid of attachment are the ones that can be the best parents
Why?
because they have what it takes. It's that attachment is what our kids need.
Right. Oh,
So
okay. I see what you're saying. But they also have empathy, I'm sure. That
exactly. They
can be
have
very good.
empathy and they will fight for this child, tooth and nail. But at the same time, knowing that, hey, actually, your fear is your strong because that's what our kids need. They never had someone fight for them. They never had someone attached to them. They never someone, that is that close to them that you help them heal. So rather what you think is negative is actually positive.
So in general, it sounds like you've had an amazing experience as a foster and you would suggest it to people, even though these kids may be coming in with some behavioral issues, some trust issues, a lot of trauma and instability. You think it's been obviously life-changing for you, but do you feel that you've seen that it's life-changing for the children?
Yes, absolutely. Love change for the children. Remember, it wasn't their choice to be born in this home. In this home, they didn't choose their parents that are drug addict, that are, that they're just innocent kids. And for us to be there for them is the greatest present we can give them as well. To their bio parents, sometimes they never had a good example of what a parent looks like. So
Yeah.
we can show that to them that we are not just helping the child, but for the entire cycle of their bio parents, that we've changed the way they view and parents as well. But they need that example. I am who I am now because I had a man who showed me how to be kind, how to give back, and how to truly love others unconditionally because he did that to me. And it's easy for me to look back and say, he taught me how. The same with our foster kids, the same with kids in foster care, to see them as human beings and say, how can I impact them? For men and women who are 40 and you're like, I want to get married so I can have kids. Hey, maybe can you be a parent while you wait to marry, rather than miss out on that opportunity of being a parent because you're waiting to get married, but rather say, hey, while I'm waiting, I'm just going to be a dad or I'm going to be a mom. Yeah.
How many of the kids that you've had have stayed in touch with you?
All of them.
Really? Oh.
Yes. So
And
Christmas
how
is
are they all
coming.
doing for the most part?
Some not so good, because they went back and 2 years or 3 years later, the parents just went back to
Right.
why they had been taken away. And some have come back in the foster care system. And I cannot take them because I already have kids,
Oh,
that
I see. Yes, yes.
I
Oh,
cannot.
I want to ask you because you hear all these stories or they're on all these movies about these terrible nightmare situations that you see in the foster care system. Kids that have gone from being little and then change foster care homes all the time, or they're abused physically, sexually. How do you think that happens? Like how does the court system or child protective services not see how much worse off they can be in some foster parents' homes?
So, most of them, they are tied to the court system. Remember, the court system says the bio parents or the next of kin are the number one where the kids want to go back to. But
Yeah.
most when you're a drug addict, that meant your entire family was most of the time. Most kids are abused sexually, not by a stranger, but members of the family. So you're going,
Yeah.
to the same system, and it's hard when they say next of kin have the right to the children, but yet the dangers. What do you do? Do you?
Yeah, no, but I'm asking about within the foster care system because you do hear these terrible stories about foster parents that
Yeah.
have abused kids. That's what I'm asking.
Yes. 40%. I mean, 40% of our foster kids are abused by foster families.
Wow, I didn't know that rate. That's a pretty high rate.
Exactly. And it's sad, it's it's hard to the way they screen, you do the classes, they do background check, but when it comes to behaviors on how you parent, I don't think they are there to monitor how you do it,
Right.
you know?
Right. Were the
Uh,
classes hard you had to take, or it's just you sitting there listening to how to handle situations?
they were not hard, but for me, I had to take more classes that I had to pay for to get more education. Like I wanted to be trauma informed, so I had to do TBR, like any resource that can help me be a better parent. I had to do that. Some parents don't do that. They just say, I'm gonna give them a roof, and that's it, you know.
Right.
Or sometimes they deal with the behavior, so they punish the child for the bad behaviors. But the
I see.
child isn't like then whatever they are doing, they aren't doing it towards you or against you.
Right.
Or sometimes foster parents think, I'm doing you a favor. Why can't you be nice to me? Why can't you do what I asked you to do? But this kid didn't choose to come to your home, so they have no right to have a favor, or feel that you favor them or you did something good because they were forced to your home. So
Right.
remember the difference is someone was forced to come and live with you, and somehow you think they should be grateful for coming to live with you. It kind of doesn't compute to the child.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So just people that are following your channel, I'm just curious. Are you able to have a job now? Are you more of like an influencer? So I mean, I know you guys do all sorts of things and you're making food and you're probably sponsored by people. How does it work? Are you able to work separately or this is your full-time job?
I have a full-time job, so I work for World Vision, and my job is to, really advocate for kids in foster care and kids all over the world that are in the
Oh,
most. So that's my full-time job.
okay.
I think, as a foster parent, I think some companies are afraid, not afraid, but I think the stigma about foster care, they're not willing to, let's say give you deals that anyone else does because you're a foster parent. So yes, I have influence and I have millions of followers, but just because I'm a foster parent, some company will say, no.
Interesting. But why? What's the stigma, do you think?
I don't know. I really like. I'll be honest. We got a deal for Hyundai, so they wanted to
Of
yeah,
the
like
car?
yeah, of the car. So they wanted us to do the ad for them. So we're like, man, this is really cool. We get to have their car for like a month, drive it and test it out, but have the kids and go to it, make kind of content. Once they found out that my kids were foster kids, they're like, no, we don't want that.
That's insane. I feel like you guys would be a great representative for a company like that.
Exactly. To most, you're like, it's social good, but also like you have faith and believe in people who
Well,
most.
yeah, and it's a family car, whether you're a foster family or a regular family, doesn't make a difference. I mean, that's
Correct.
crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have to figure out what car company, appreciates the role that you've been doing and the help that you've been giving kids. That's just insane to me.
Please, we want
And
one
so,
so I have two. I can take in more kids, but because my car is small, I cannot. So all my needs right now is a 9-seater car, and I'll be set.
wow. Okay. Yeah. You need like a Rivian, something big.
Yes,
Yeah. I
something like
love,
that.
I love those. Okay. So just incidentally, when was the last time you spoke to people in your family?
Every day. Nowadays, the technology is made it easy. The WhatsApp, I can know what they did. I can know who's not feeling well. I can see the rejoicing because you're on a family chat. You can see what they're doing, which has made life a little easier and stay connected to the family for sure.
Is your father still alive?
Yes, my father and my mom are still married. Which is kind of strange.
They're still married. And are they still in Uganda?
Yes, they're still in Uganda.
And do you actually speak to him as well?
Yes, I speak to him because I think I wanted to show him an example of what a dad looks like. I wanted to show him like what love means. I don't think, I think after being a foster parent, that I come to realize like sometimes people are abusive because that's how they were raised.
Sure, sure.
That's all
And,
they knew. That I
and
wanted
what's
to
his
break that down.
response?
Well, I think, I think like 15 years ago, he talked to me, say, you know what? He calls my foster parent. He said, your dad has told me what our father ought to be. And I think that was enough for me to see like, oh, okay, he's really seen what a dad looks like because he saw how this stranger family treated me. And he's like, he calls them my dad. He's like, your dad has told me. And I think that's for me what I needed. He's proud of me. I can tell you. He thinks I'm
Good.
the
That's what I was
coolest
asking.
human being on the planet. Yeah.
Have they been to the United States?
No, not really. They have not.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, so I want to talk really quickly. Well, you've written some books, right? And you have Now I Am Known, or the organization. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Now I'm Known organization, we do that to help teenagers and foster parents. So what I do room makeovers. Most kids in foster care have never had an opportunity to have a room where they say, I want pink, I want yellow, paint it the way I want. And for me, I wanted to do that for teens who are being adopted or who are moving in college or who are moving to another foster family. That if I can take that away from a foster parent, I get to do the room for them.
Oh, that's so fun.
They choose their colors, they choose their beddings, and we surprise them by doing that. That's really, for me, what I love to really do. But also let them tell their story from a room makeover point of view, rather from what they've gone through. And that's really what I love. I love to do for the kids.
Amazing. And what's in the future for you? Will you be writing another book? Or what do you want out of life in the future?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I want to force some more kids and adopt some more kids. And I just finished writing 2 books. So, we have a parenting book coming out in May and a children's book coming out sometime at the end of next year as well. So it's been wonderful writing a little bit more. And really now that I feel like I have experience that I can share, people want to know, how do I do this? And I think by writing it would be the best way for people kind of to read trauma and how I responded and what I learned from it by having material that can help them.
Amazing. I think that you could write, and maybe you have already, but you could write an amazing children's book on the little boy Peter that you were, and how you got from Uganda to your life now. And then also the kids that come through your home. It would be so cute to have a book of little stories that they've written while they were there. I don't know. I'm not a publisher, but I just think I would love to read something like that,
No, your point on. I mean, you're on it, how did you know,
Oh, good. Well, I hope you do something like that. What is your biggest takeaway, I guess? Like what can you tell people again that are on the fence, that are thinking about getting into this? What would you say to them?
Well, look, for me, sometimes people say those kids are lucky to have you, but I would say I am the lucky one to have them, that their parents and the social worker could allow me to be their parents. Like, love on them and care for them is the greatest thing they've given me, that they would trust me and teach me. And for me too, it's helped me to heal and be a better human being because of being a parent. So it's not just a one way that I'm helping the kids, but the kids are helping me as well. So it's a both. Both of us are real learning. Like, I would say, if you're out there and you have the heart and you want to help, there's 450,000 kids in foster care. We can help one, and I know we can also do, or my calling is we can't all be foster parent, but we can all do something, reach out to someone who's struggling, give a coffee to a mom. Don't judge a mom, more a yard for someone who needs a yard, bring me coffee, give me a phone call, help me do room makeover. Like, we can't all be like you right now. You're not a foster parent, but you're giving us a platform to tell our story, So are you doing? Absolutely. You're going to touch so many by just sharing our story, but in some way you're touching the lives of those who are also going through it as well. So we can all do something. It doesn't have to be foster care, but something along the life of a child to change their lives.
You are so inspirational. Peter, tell people that are listening where they can find you and follow your story.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Foster.Flipper. You can find me on YouTube, Now I'm Known. And you can find me on TikTok, Now I'm Known. Or our website, nowimknown.org.
Amazing. I wish you the best of luck. I'm going to keep following you and watch your story unfold. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Please be sure to subscribe to the show and give us a 5-star rating and review. You can support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/misunderstood with Rachel Yucatel. Do you have ideas for the show or want to reach out? Email us at info misunderstoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's spelled MISS understood. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.